Welcome to Narratives Leadership Story Talks, where great leaders go beyond the bottom line to create lasting impact. Join hosts Jerome Deroy and Julienne Ryan as they uncover the stories behind real-world challenges, offering practical insights to help you lead with empathy, authenticity, and purpose. Each episode dives into how leaders use storytelling to build trust, foster connection, and inspire action. Whether you're navigating workplace dynamics, driving change, or building high-performing teams.
Of my own experience, I've been laid off a number of times, and I used to have great shame about that, and now I have great pride and appreciation and acceptance of what it has taught me. Each and every time I was laid off, I was able to increase my health and wealth for myself and my family. Health and wealth for myself and my family. Now, wealth can be measured a lot of different ways, partly financial, which matters, and partly in wisdom and figuring things out and determining what's important to you. And ideally, you get a balance of both.
Hi, everyone. This is Leadership Story Talks, and we just heard from Gary Danoff, who was just talking about how getting laid off was, something that he was able to turn from a really negative emotion and shame to something much more positive that's actually informing his work right now, and he's able to use those experiences to support other people. So I thought that was really inspiring. I thought it was a whole inspiring interview, really just in general. So I highly recommend that everyone goes to check out episode 142 with Gary Danoff on narrative.com and narativ.com and anywhere you find these podcasts. But one of the things that this reminded me of, or the question that I thought we could kick off with, was to ask, well, when was a time you appreciated something in hindsight only? So in other words, something that happened that was kind of negative at first or made you feel negatively at the time, but then later you come to appreciate it as a positive thing. Is there anything that comes up for you, Julienne?
Well, many things come up, but just to focus on, it takes a amount of courage to do what Gary was doing about sharing a pain point and how it informed his purpose and how it changed his perspective. Because you can coach and be empathetic and give good guidance, but when you have the courage to share that kind of backstory, it gives context and flavor to your experiences and helps build trust, as you know, as us being in the story sharing business. So you get to go to a deeper level in attaching meaning to your words. Yes, you have to time it well and not overshare too soon, because when we're coaching or we're connecting with everybody, it's about the listener or our coaching clients or the people that we're working with. But I just thought he did such an artful job of really creating a structure about what he was on a mission to do afterwards with this learning.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's the power of that origin story, and an origin story is only powerful if there was some kind of pain, some kind of struggle, some kind of conflict, and this one is very clear cut, and it's also very relatable, because when you hear about someone being laid off, I think for most people, we know what that feels like. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of us who don't know how that feels. And so I think we can immediately relate to that emotion, whatever emotion it is. For him, it's shame, but for others, it might be anger, it might be sadness, it might be depression, whatever it is. So for some, it might be elation, and being really excited. But whatever it is, there is that experience that too many of us have gone through. And I think then, once you hear that, and Gary was willing to say that, he was willing to say how bad that felt and go into the detail of that, then it was so much easier. It's so much easier for someone like that to be listened to afterwards. If you're willing to talk about that pain, to talk about that struggle, then I'm definitely going to be listening to what you have to say after you've told me about that pain and conflict. And I think that's the beauty of an origin story like that, is that you've got that moment of pain, but then it turns to something positive. It turns into something else. And I think for a lot of people right now, they are in the middle of it. They're in the middle of that kind of, maybe it's a negative emotion that's going on right now because you've just been laid off and you're kind of wondering what that next step is going to be. And that's okay. You're there. But I think when we hear people like Gary and many others who are willing to talk about these experiences, we see that something else is available on the other side of that. And so my hope is that this is inspirational for people, that even if you're in it right now, to know that, yeah, there are people out there for whom it got a lot better, and who took those experiences and then turned them into something. So that's what I wish for everybody out there.
Well, that is very important, and more so now when we have in our culture right now, seeing a lot of downsizings, a lot of restructurings, because people are being impacted in large numbers. And the natural inclination is people are going to think I did something wrong or I wasn't good enough instead of how restructuring sometimes happen. It's a numbers game and there's a lots of dynamics besides that going on. And he makes it real. He
Mm,
makes it approachable. He's also a student of it. So he doesn't go in his work talking at people and preaching during the, he really pulls information out of every guest when he's talking on his podcast and his coaching to learn from them and to curate information about what these experiences taught them and how he can play it forward for
mm,
others. So he's
mm.
taking pain points and creating purpose from
Yeah.
that. And then he's, like you said, showing it's never easy, but you're going to get through it and figure out a way to repurpose everything and all your skills and move forward.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the things you have to do in between. So it's a lot of work, but I'm not putting a romantic tale to this, but he makes it possible. So it's great
Hmm.
to have that kind of resource that is there for everybody. And it's
Hmm.
kind of resonates with what we do here, but I just thought it was such an energizing episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did bring me back, just a quick story, to a time when I first arrived in New York from Hong Kong after leaving a career in finance. And I was really looking for creative work. And I was lucky enough to be hired as a production manager on a very small independent production in New York City for an independent film. And and of course, up until then, my experience in production management in film was one short film that I had done 3 months before that. And so I had no experience with feature films or anything like that. And I took a bus from New York City to New Jersey. I forget where in New Jersey,
Oh
but
my
it was
God.
about, yeah, it was about 45 minutes every day. I would commute in and out. There was a little office that I worked out of, and my job was to essentially I had to find and secure locations for the shoot. I had to make sure we had casting calls. I mean, it was really everything. And I was in charge of the budget as well, made sure we had to stay in budget. And I remember one of the things I had to do was to plan for this elaborate scene that was going to happen towards the end of the film that involved a helicopter, and we needed aerial shots. And so I got in touch with all these helicopter companies, and did all this research, but none of them were available in the time that we needed. And the producer, who was my boss and who hired me, was getting really frustrated with me. The director, on the other hand, I had a really good relationship with him, and he kind of understood, why it was taking long. And eventually that producer said, you know what? This is costing too much money. We can't work with you anymore. And I got laid off. And that was it. And,
Oh,
and so it lasted 2 months, I think. And it was supposed to be for 5 months, 4 months, 5 months. And of course, my heart sank, and then I took that bus back, the bus of shame,
oh, poor
as
sorry. I know.
back to New York City. And of course, I tell you this, and I have a smile on my face because I look back to that, and then I remember all the things that that I did not like or appreciate from the way that everything was working, and mainly, no one was appreciating what I was doing. I was alone
Hmm.
in an office on the phone all day, securing all these things, and then I'd go out and find the people. I mean, I found the guy's cameraman and all that, and all these things. I did it all under budget, And yet no one was around sort of saying, yeah, okay, good job. Yeah, we did this. That's great. And that
Hmm.
really matters to me. I'm the kind of person who kind of needs that. And I need to be working with other people. And so in hindsight, I was looking at this and I thought, oh yeah, that's exactly what I don't want to create as an environment. When I'm, able to work to create environments for other people. So it taught me a lot about engagement, and how to keep people interested in what they're doing, how to make them feel valued. So yeah. So in hindsight, it was actually a positive thing because then after that, within a couple of months of that experience, I met Murray Nossel, and who founded Narrative, and here we are today.
Oh, you had a whole new skill set. But I can appreciate that because when we're starting out in a lot of roles, you are doing the worst drudgery work. You're schlepping, you're behind the scenes, like throw the person a bone. Just say thank you and thanks for showing up. I had one boss, so I'll tell her, I'm quoting her. We're still friends. And I would have crazy days. This company was restructuring every time it turned around. We went through so many presidents, so many things. And sometimes she had a bad day and she would be a little abrupt and everything, but she always called me from I-95 on her way home to say, thank you for showing up and doing everything. I know it was a little crazy today. And by the way, you're coming back tomorrow. And she's going to laugh when I tell her she's now recorded for time, all time's sake. But it was true. It was like, if you're there, like, why am I here? I have
Mm.
a highly paid degree that I spent a ton of money on, and I'm, doing all this stuff. So that little bit of acknowledgement of
Yes. Yeah.
anybody that you can
Anybody.
see that's working, staff, support people, ops, the guy who's in the, opening the door downstairs, whatever it takes. You don't know what's going on in their life. So if you and it feeds your soul because if you do more thank you and appreciation, you actually are in a better mood. And I know this for myself. Like, you need to reshift the ions once in a while and just kind of
Mm.
look at what's working instead of like what problem you have. So
That is
sometimes
such a good point. It makes
walk
you,
around.
yes, and it makes you feel good. It makes you, the person who's acknowledging the other one, feel good. When you tell somebody, and when you thank them, when you show your gratitude, it makes you feel good. And I think that's really, yeah, that's a big point to make here. So yeah, I invite everyone to look back at these experiences that maybe weren't so great or a little bit painful, but they might be your origin story. They might be the beginning of your origin story, and then you'll see some really positive things in there. So yeah, thanks to Gary Danoff, and thanks to you, Julian, for bringing Gary onto the podcast in the first place.
Oh
That
my
was great.
God, it was a
Yeah.
pleasure. And I'm going to keep that visual of you going through Port Authority in my
Yes.
head.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's like, that's a
Yeah.
whole, if anyone's from New York, they understand what we're talking about.
Yes.
Like that's epic.
That was definitely one of the top three things that I look back in appreciation of like, oh yeah, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore.
It would be quicker to immigrate to another country
That's
than
right.
to get
Exactly.
over the bridge or the tunnel sometimes. But and there were no Ubers probably back then or no easy transits. There's so
No.
many layers to that story.
So true. So
So
true. I'll,
sorry.
I'll I'll unpack it more, yeah, listeners, and maybe you'll hear more of that. But yeah.
But here's the thing. One last thing.
Yeah.
We have been doing this for a while together. We've been through 100 zillion episodes. We've done things. And just like when my husband and I have been married for decades, when you hear a new story, it's very exciting. So this is all the more reason to do some of this work in your teams to show appreciation where you
Mm.
have had crazy situations. So don't underestimate because like I hope you're enjoying this, but I really did because it's like a new little bit of treasure that he's unrevealed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can tell that story with great joy, even though at the time it was really not joyful at all. But yeah, so yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, and I think that's true for everyone else, for everyone that's listening and is interested in this work. And yes, find those new stories to tell, and in connection with appreciation and gratitude, for example. That's a great example of a story prompt you can use, right? So, all right, well, we will leave it there for now. Until next time, listeners, thanks again for being here. And thanks, Jules, for being my co-host. As always, go to narrative.com and ARATIV.com to find this podcast and many others in our vault. And as well as go to the resources tab because you'll find lots of things there as well where you can learn more and contact us. We're always happy to listen to whatever you have to tell us. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.